in your family. Not Uncle Bubba or Cousin Rufus or Skidmore or some of the rest of them. They're in there. But before you leave today, you need to know if Jesus is in your family. Amen. Mark chapter 3, verse 31 says, there came then his brethren and his mother, and standing without, sent unto him, calling him. And the multitude sat about him, and they said unto him, behold, thy mother and thy brethren without are seeking thee, or looking for you. And he answered them, saying, who is my mother or my brethren? And he looked around about on them which sat about him, and said, behold, my mother and my brethren. For whosoever shall do the will of God, the same is my brother and my sister and mother. Amen. You may be seated. Look at somebody that's sitting around and say, is Jesus in your family?
Jesus in your family?
Don't answer that. Don't answer that. Is Jesus in your family? In Mark chapter 3, Jesus does quite different than what the statement was that I aforementioned. You can choose your friends, but you can't choose your family. But in Mark chapter 3, however, Jesus chooses both. In verse 13 through verse 19, Jesus chooses his friends by appointing 12 apostles to be with him as he sends them out to preach in various areas. In verses 31 through verse 35, he chooses the family, those who he calls his mother, his brother, and his sisters.
Amen.
In Mark chapter 3, verse 20 and verse 21, reads like this. Then he went home, and the crowd gathered again, so that they could not even eat. And when his family heard it, they went out and seized him, Jesus they're talking about. For they were saying, he's out of his mind. Mary, who was a virgin when she gives birth to Jesus, did not really understand the true and whole identity of who Jesus was.
Yeah.
Because John picks it up in John chapter 7, around verse 5. John says it this way, for not even his brothers believed in him.
Yes, sir.
They thought he was out of his mind, so they traveled from Nazareth to Capernaum to seize him and to bring him home.
Yeah.
And as they went on their way, a controversy erupts between Jesus and the religious leaders. And in verse 22, it says, and the scribes who came down from Jerusalem were saying, he is possessed by Beelzebub and by a prince or the prince of demons. And he is casting out demons in the name of this Beelzebub. Catch the parallel
that Mark begins to display, because Mark says it in verse 21 and 22 that his family was saying that Jesus is out of his mind.
Yeah.
The scribes were saying that he is possessed by Beelzebub.
Yes, sir.
That's in verses 23 through verse 30. And Jesus exposes these non-sensual activities by simply saying and beginning to talk from verses 31 through verse 35. He begins to teach a whole new aspect of what it was all about. He was quite stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Yes, sir.
Because on one hand, his family didn't believe in him. They thought he was crazy.
Oh, yeah.
On the other hand, the religious leaders thought that he was operating out of some demonic approach by healing people.
Yes, sir.
And so Jesus says, it's not that I'm crazy, and it's not that I'm led by some demon.
Yeah.
But Jesus begins to teach them what family is all about from verses 31 through verse 35.
Come on, Pastor.
And then Mark resumes this original story about Jesus and his family, and it's divided into two sections that I think is worthy of us talking about. The interpretation of Jesus by his family in verse 31, and his mother and his brothers, the Bible says they both came. This is the first reference in the Bible of a direct reference to Jesus' mother.
Yeah.
Jesus, in the Gospel of Mark, the reference of his brother and his mother's sparked some debate, because the Roman Catholic Church believes in their canon and in their doctrine of the perpetual virginity of Mary. They believe and they claim that this reference of Jesus's brothers were really Jesus' cousins, and Jesus just called them brother because that's what Mark decided to write, but that's not biblical. When Mark writes that it was Jesus' brother, yes, when Mary gave birth to Jesus, she was a virgin. That's what the Bible says. And though the Catholic Church believes that she is a perpetual virgin, it is not scriptural.
Yeah.
Because the Bible says that even after Jesus was born, the Bible says, and Joseph knew Mary.
Yeah.
It is not the knowing of Mary like I know you or you know me. It is the getting together of a man and a woman. So the Bible said after Jesus was born, Mary and Joseph got together again and had some other children.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
When you read the text, it's quite alarming, because of these brothers of Jesus Christ, James and Joseph and Judas and Simon. These were family members, and the family of Jesus heard the report about him preaching in a house and concluded that he must have lost his mind and lost track of time. So they head out to meet Jesus where he was, and they get outside of where Jesus is preaching and ministering. But for the press and the throng of the crowd, they could not get close to Jesus, because you and I know that wherever Jesus went, he always drew a crowd. Because there was something miraculous about Jesus, that when he showed up, miracles showed up, and when he showed up, blessings showed up. And so wherever Jesus was a happening place to be, because the blind received their sight, the lame started walking, the dumb started talking. Wherever Jesus was, you could never come in contact with the divine creator and walk away the same way you found him. So when people came to him lost, they walked away found. So when they showed up, Jesus turns this house into a sanctuary. He turns this house into a place of worship and a place of reverence. He turns this church into a place that the presence of the Lord could permeate every person, so you knew you were in some place that was special because Jesus was there.
Yeah.
Brothers and his mother shows up.
Yes, sir.
They get to where Jesus is, and the scripture says that Jesus is in ministry. He's performing ministry, and verse 31 says something interesting. Mark says that he marks their arrival, and he says that his mother and his brothers came, and they were standing outside, and they sent someone in to call on him.
Yeah.
House was so crowded they couldn't get to the window.
Yes, Lord.
Couldn't get to the door. No room was left for them. Maybe Jesus was preaching one of those great sermons. People were so in tune and so entrenched that the crowds just kept coming.
Yeah.
And verse 32 says, and the crowd was sitting around him, and they said to him, someone, as the messenger came, said, your mama and your brothers are outside. And Jesus looks at him, and then he looks at the crowd, and he says to them, who is my mother? And who is my brother? Verse 31 and 32 specify that his mother's, watch this, and his brothers were outside. Geographically, that gives reference to two things that were going on.
Yeah.
His mother, let me see if I can fix it, and his brother were outside.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. This has spiritual significance to it. They were outside. Those who were biologically close to him were outside. Those who were spiritually close to him were inside.
Yeah.
Okay, let me say that again. I missed some of you. Let me say it again. Those who were biologically connected to him were outside.
Come on, Pastor.
Those who were spiritually connected to him were inside.
Yeah.
The outsiders interrupted his time with the insiders, trying to make him join them outside.
Yes, sir.
Come on, Doc. Preach it, man.
I hope y'all get what I'm trying to say. The ones who was looking for something from Jesus were inside.
Yeah.
The ones who were just looking for him was outside.
Yeah.
And the ones that were outside were trying to stop him from helping the people that were on the inside.
Yes, sir.
So the people on the inside could join the folk that were doing nothing on the outside.
Come on, Pastor.
Jesus understood. He looks at this and he gives them this rather rhetorical question. He says, who is my mother and my brother?
Yeah.
He's not being capricious. He's not being unfair. He's not being ignorant of the question that's at hand. Jesus is getting ready to teach us all a lesson.
Yeah.
Because you do know, just because you're in close proximity to things that are people that may be righteous, don't make you righteous.
Amen.
Just because you show up at church, don't put you in right standing with God. Oh, come on, talk back with me.
Yeah.
Just because you say I'm a member here or I'm a member or I can quote a few scriptures, or I can read my Bible. I know the right time to show up at church. It doesn't necessarily mean that you are a part of Jesus and he's a part of you.
Come on, Pastor.
Touch somebody and say proximity don't matter. Just because you merge in the same space doesn't give you the right to say that Jesus is a part of me, because the Pharisees and Sadducees showed up where he was. He said, whenever the sons of God got together, help me Bible reader, Satan was always
Present.
in the midst. So he gives them this rhetorical question, not being rude, not being ignorant of the question. Jesus introduces a critical issue. He said, what does it mean to be related to Jesus?
Yeah.
That's what he's really hinging on. That's what he's really getting at. Because without waiting for a response, Jesus says, I know you don't know, so I'm going to give you the answer. And Jesus answers his own question right here in verse 34. And looking at those that sat on the ground and sat around him, he said, here are my brother, my mother, and my brothers. In Matthew chapter 12, verse 49, is more specific. And he said, Matthew records this same incident, and Matthew says, and stretching out his hand toward his disciples, he says, here are my mother and my brothers. This is not just some quick saying. What he was saying as he was getting ready to die on the cross, as he was making arrangements to take care of the ministry, he also wanted them to understand, even when it came to John chapter 19, verse 26 and 27, says, and when Jesus saw his mother, he's dying on the cross now. When Jesus saw his mother, he says unto him, woman, behold thy son. Yeah. He said to his disciples, behold your mother. Yeah. The Bible said, and from that day on, they took Mary into their own house and treated her with the kindness and respect that a mother deserves. The birth of the church on the day of Pentecost, his mother and his brothers believed in him. When it came to Acts chapter 1 and verse 14, he said all these with one accord were devoting themselves in prayer, and they were praying together with women, and Mary, the mother of Jesus, and the brothers, and his brother James became the leader of the church in Jerusalem, the bishop, in fact, of the church in Jerusalem, who wrote the New Testament letter of James. And in bearing his own name, when Jesus says, here is my mother and my brothers, he was not cutting off his family. He was refining what family really means. Amen. Jesus declares there's a physical bond in that word family. Yes. But there's a greater bond than physical bond. And that's a spiritual bond. Amen. Because most of us, can I say this? Yeah. Let me see if I can fix it. Good. Most of us would conclude that there are people outside of your family that in some cases will treat you better than the people that you share blood with. I think I just said something. So family then was not redefined by Preacher Holman. Family was redefined by Jesus himself. And he says, just because you share the same blood, don't conclude that that's just family. Because that is family on the lowest structure that family can be displayed. If you really want to know what family is, it's on a spiritual level, because the spiritual bond is always greater than the physical bond. Jesus. He says, you got to be careful. He said, I'm not saying that Mary isn't my mother. I'm not saying that they're not my brothers. That's just my physical bond. But there is a spiritual bond because I got spiritual mother sitting here and spiritual brother sitting here. And by the time you get to verse 35, he says, I even got spiritual sisters that are sitting here. Jesus gives this indication because he wants to help us to understand the reference, the knowledge, the understanding. He redefines, I told you, what family is all about. Membership in God's spiritual family is evidenced by then the obedience to him. It's more important than human families. This passage is not just about family, not just about the scribes, it's not just about the crowds, it's not just about the miracles, but it's really getting to the heart of the issue by asking you, are you a part of Jesus' family? Is he a part of your family? Because your relationship with Jesus does matter. Look at the text in verse 35. For whoever does the will of God, he is my brother and sister and mother. If you do his will. If you obey and trust in him. That's what he's really saying. If you show him honor, if you show him praise. So what then is the role of the spiritual birth? Because if I want to be a part of him and I want him to be a part of me, Ephesians chapter 2 verse 8 and 9 says, for by grace you have been saved through faith, and that not of your own doing, but it is a gift of God, not as a result of work, so that no one has the right to boast about it. R. Kent Hughes comments and he says, obedience does not generate from just a relationship with God, but it generates from an obedience to the same God. The proof of faith is really obedience. And one of the hardest things to get Christians to do is to obey.
That's the truth.
We talk it, we walk it, we read it. Come on, talk with me. But from the pulpit to the back door, the difficulty that rests in our human spirit and in our human culture is the power to just obey. Jesus says, if you want to be a part of my family, obedience is better than a sacrifice. He says we got to learn how to obey. And then he tells us something else. He says that we've got to have a biblical conviction. I hear people say, I'm not religious. I'm spiritual. I've heard that. And I thought about that. I said, preacher, I'm not religious. I'm just spiritual. And the more I think about that, what you're really saying is that I love Jesus, but I don't love the church. Because see, just being spiritual without being religious puts you on the same plane as Satan himself. Because Satan is spiritual. All right, let me see if I can make this make sense. Outside of the metaphysical, there exists a spiritual world. Satan is not in flesh and blood. He moves and operates in the spirit realm.
Yes, sir.
And because he operates in the spirit realm, he is a spirit.
Yes.
He has demons who are demonic, and they too are spirits.
Yes.
That's why the Bible said we wrestle not against flesh and blood. You're looking at a person, but it is a demonic spirit that's making that person act a fool like they're acting a fool.
Come on, Doc.
Can I scoot in close?
Yeah.
Okay, Satan is spiritual.
Yeah.
He is absent of religion.
Yes.
Religiosity. When you talk about religion, in its deepest sense, on surface, religion is just doing something over and over again, perpetual motion. But on its deepest sense, it means a true connection to one deity or one God.
Yes.
We don't operate in religion on the surface, because surface religion is just saying, I'm here to do it, and when it's over, I'm going to go home and go wherever else. But we operate on a deeper sense of religion to say, I give my allegiance to Jesus Christ. I pledge my allegiance to one God. You know, just like we do when it comes to when you learn in school how you put your hand on your chest and you say, I pledge allegiance to the flag, and go forward, and you go on with your pledging allegiance. What you're really saying is that I'm going to honor a flag. Well, the same thing comes with your spiritual life, that we pledge allegiance to one God. And so it is not that religion is bad. On the natural surface, religion is just surface stuff. But when you get to understand God, it's deeper than that. So I move in the spiritual realm with my religion intact to say I got God on my side. Okay, that's the spiritual side. I got religion to keep me in check. I got some dogma, some things in life, some places I can't go, some things I can't say, some things I can't do, because my religion ought to keep me in check. But my spiritual being is the one that I talk to, and God talks to me. Talk to me, somebody. So he says, I got religion. Yeah. That checks who I am.
Oh, yeah.
I got the spirit that keeps me walking in the right direction.
Yes, Lord.
But watch this, and I'm closing. He said something else. He says that if I'm going to be in your family, here's the last thing. He says, you've got to understand that you're not the only one. Tell somebody and say, you're not the only one in the family.
You're not the only one in the family.
We're all a part of this thing
Yes, Lord.
together. That's all I'm going to say. And I'm going to close it right there.
Amen, Pastor.
We're in this family together. You're not the only one saved.
Yes.
You're not the only one right. You're not the only one that he's allowed to come in the family.
Amen.
And the good news is that there's still room for more. And if you come, he'll make room for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even the people that were in the window, on the porch,
Yeah.
in the outer chamber,
Mm-hmm.
he made room for.
Yes, he did.
Mary and his brothers had to wait until Jesus finished what he was doing.
That's right.
Amen.
And don't you know, I'm closing for real now. If Jesus made his own mama wait,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Come on, Doc.
you and I better learn how to get in line
Yes.
Yes, sir.
and learn how, if he made his own mama wait,
Yeah.
he has the right to make you and I wait.
That's right.
Amen.
And the scripture said, wait on the Lord, be of good courage, and he shall strengthen thine heart. Wait, I say,
Yes, Lord.
on the Lord.
Yes.
If you believe it, clap your hands.